Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 8 preview edition. Wide receiver injury, Armageddon. We are trying to sort through this week. Some of the big waiver claims of the season were processed earlier this week. We're going to get into whether you can start them right away. Some other big changes around the league. Let's dive in. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast presented by our friends over at Underdog, over at DraftKings Pick 6, and over at Circa. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. Mario, can you see that my background is different?
It's because you're at the RotoWire headquarters, I think, rather than your Atlanta residence.
Spot on. It's wonderful to be in RotoWire HQ for this particular show. Got the RotoWire staff steak league baseball dinner this evening at a famed Madison steakhouse. So I'm looking forward to that. But we've got a lot of other things to dig into, of course, on this here podcast. So why don't we get things rolling with the Thursday night football game? We've got the Rams checking in as slight home underdogs. The road favorites have been doing great thus far, or at least in recent weeks. We got the Vikings 2.5 or 3-point favorites, depending on which book you're looking at as they go into Los Angeles to face the Rams. I think the big storylines from this game, of course, are more so on the Rams side of things. Trade rumors continue to swirl as it pertains to Cooper Kupp. Do you think that this could be his last game in Los Angeles?
I have no idea. I mean, I can kind of in a way see how the Rams might see Kupp as slightly redundant to Nacua when they're both healthy. And it looks like Nacua is also going to be back for this game. So interesting, almost tense situation for the Rams politically in this game. But that offense is totally different when they have Kupp and Nacua. So especially against this Vikings defense that has has done so well this year. If the Rams somehow make a good showing with their passing game, maybe that demonstrates to the Rams brass, like, this is actually too good to break up. But if Kupp is not able to coexist with Nacua at the fullest extent of both players, I think it kind of does make sense to, if the Rams can get something for Kupp, make sure they're getting instead speed like Atwell's on the field to clear out that much more room for Nacua, etc. But the tough part is more like, for such an expensive aging player as Kupp is there a team that would offer enough to make it worth the Rams to make their offense probably slightly worse? That part I'm almost more skeptical of than anything, because I'm just not convinced anybody would offer more than maybe a fourth, and for the Rams, why even bother?
Right. I think, you can use the Devontae Adams and the Amari Cooper to a lesser extent trades as somewhat of examples of what, the Rams might be seeking on the trade market. It's obviously been a pretty active trade market thus far. And this could be a showcase game, of course. But when it comes to your fantasy lineups, the fact that this game is on a Thursday night where we've got those two star players, coming off of lengthy absences, what's your level of confidence in using both of those guys against a pass defense that's been pretty stingy?
Yeah, it's a Vikings pass defense that has been stingy, but in the context of the pass rush and the run defense both doing great up until last week. And Blake Cashman's out again. I don't know how much he'll prove important to the run defense, but it's like, if the run defense gets a little worse, and if McVay can kind of figure some things out the way that Ben Johnson did last week, I tend to see this as either the Rams offense does well in general, and both Kupp and Nacua carry good projections, or the Vikings kind of just get back on that defensive schedule they were before last week, when no one could seem to get any traction against them. I always thought that the Vikings defensive success, though fully impressive, especially on the part of Brian Flores, if it requires overachieving from your personnel level, then generally regression will find you some way, even if it's in the form of only the best play callers like Johnson and McVay getting the best out of you and correcting your numbers that way. But yeah, with Nakua and Cup, I don't really want to bet against McVay, even though the matchup is pretty intimidating.
Yeah, this is a tough one to call against the spread. Given that the Rams should be closer to their fully fleshed out form in this one. Our guy Michael chimes in, wondering if we think that Puka will be on a snap count this evening.
Right. I think it's possible they keep Nakua out of some situations that he would normally play, but I don't think many of them or any of them will be route running situations, which is all we really care about. So even if he's only playing something like 40 snaps as opposed to 60, I think he still projects something like 8 targets for Nakua, and it's fair to carry some concern about that. But generally, if Stafford's having a good day and Nakua's playing that much, everything else tends to work itself out. Yeah, it's not the easiest situation to call, I guess.
No, it is tricky. I don't have a ton of Nakua exposure in redraft, so I'm not faced with that decision in most spots. But it is definitely a tricky one to sort. You'll have to look at your options. But with a pretty full slate this week, I think people should have other options if they're a little bit more of taking a wait and see approach on Nakua. But good call that they won't put him out there in obvious run spots, but they want his route running out there, no question. Let's jump over to Sunday. I think one of the kind of crazier teams to pin down at this point is the Cleveland Browns. They'll be playing host to the Baltimore Ravens. 8.5-point favorites are the Ravens in Cleveland for this one. Cleveland's going to look a lot different now, and it's rare at the NFL level that a starting quarterback goes out and the offense could improve. I think we see it occasionally in college where the starter goes down and the guy behind him might actually end up being more talented or a better fit for the offense. We've seen that before on Saturdays, but Sundays, it's not every time. Usually, we get something closer to, what we're seeing in New Orleans right now, for example. But how do you think that this move with Deshaun Watson being out for the season, the move to Jameis Winston, is going to, kind of impact your projection of this Cleveland offense going forward?
I think Winston just improves the projection for the Browns offense because Deshaun Watson was physically expired and just trying to play when he wouldn't have made an NFL team even as a backup if it wasn't for that contract forcing the Browns to keep him on the team. Similarly, he wouldn't have played ahead of Winston if there weren't the same thing protecting him. So I know it seems kind of ridiculous, and Winston's almost certainly bad in his own right, but we have not really seen a quarterback as physically non-viable as Deshaun Watson since, like, I don't know, when Peyton Manning was playing with like a steel rod through his neck or whatever that one year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it improves it, and at the very least, Winston's going to chuck the ball downfield. Watson was a low velo guy before his shoulder got shredded. Jameis will chuck the ball, at least the check down nonsense. These players who are getting 10 targets for 45 yards, those days are over. Even if the catch rate goes down a little bit, the yardage is going up.
So I think there were some interesting takeaways from last week's game as far as the target counts were concerned, because it was not only Watson getting injured in that game, but it was the first game without Amari Cooper in that offense as well. So David Njoku draws 14 targets in that game. Cedric Tillman, a healthy target share as well. I was pretty aggressive with my approach in trying to acquire him on waiver wires this week, and we'll see how a couple of those go in our RotoWire leagues that have the Fab run on Thursday afternoons. But your expectations on a guy like Tillman this week, and in a tight end landscape as tricky as it's been, is Njoku kind of now like a top 5-ish tight end going forward?
Maybe. I definitely think Njoku has the talent to drive that kind of outcome, and I think a season like last year it's a reflection of Njoku's actual ability. It's not like he had all the planets align and eke out a season like last year. Like, he would do that all the time if he just had a good enough quarterback. So might be a bit of a leap of faith to think Winston can be that. But again, whatever Winston might be, he's going to prove better than Watson, and probably by a lot. So maybe it's not going to be perfectly clean. Maybe it's going to be some cold stretches for Njoku, but the arrow is pointed upward for absolute sure. I don't know what is as much to make about Tillman. Interesting player, totally decent as a prospect, but I think you can bank very reliably on Jerry Jeudy's target rate catching up and exceeding Tillman's after, for instance, in this game last week, Jerry Jeudy had 6 targets on 74 snaps. Tillman had 12 on something like almost 50 or something like that. And normally it would be the other way around, and Tillman getting that target volume in that game might kind of, nudge the defense to look at him more, which that's when we find out what he really is capable of, because it's one thing to kind of get something on a defense that didn't scheme for you, didn't necessarily even know who you were really in the game plan. Now they will, because he's playing more snaps than Elijah Moore for obvious enough reasons.
So not to helmet scout too much, but I do kind of feel like he is pretty similar to Juwan Jennings.
Cedric Tillman.
Yes.
He's at least, I mean, I think he can play a little more on the outside. Like the 49ers have mostly used Jennings in the slot as like an almost tight end because he ran that 4-7-3 or whatever. But Tillman's probably able to do a little bit more downfield, less slot dependent too.
Yeah, so I'm definitely interested in him. I do, like you said, expect Jeudy to get a little bit more involved in this particular week, and I think it's not a bad spot for Cleveland's offense, given the kind of defensive woes that Baltimore's had, namely in the secondary, and it could be pressed even further if Marlon Humphrey's unable to play.
Yeah, and Travis Jones is missing practice, not a pass defense concern specifically, but in a game, Nate Wiggins with shoulder also, so you could be down to your fourth, fifth string corner. At the same time, you might be without a 2-gap front 7 guy like Travis Jones. And I think with the Ravens, you have a bit of a sleepwalking risk because they've kind of had a string of big wins, and the Browns look like a joke, et cetera, et cetera. So a bit of a trap game for the Ravens, actually, in that sense. Although if they play the way they should take care of business, because the Browns still are pretty much bad, even if Watson was in a way the main reason they were bad.
And then the kind of offensive emergence in Baltimore, as it pertains to Rashad Bateman and I think even more importantly, probably for fantasy, Mark Andrews. What have you kind of seen from maybe like the snap and target shares from Andrews in particular in an offense that uses 3 tight ends, probably as much or more than any other team in the league? Is not to say that his performance on Monday night is sustainable or something to expect week to week, but are we past that point of being really concerned about Mark Andrews?
There's still the concern, or I guess disappointment, that he's not playing as much as he could in other offenses. And we might or might not see that change over the course of the year. As much as they've been using Isaiah Likely as kind of the lead snap guy, there's just no way he's as good of a blocker as Andrews, and being 20 pounds lighter, being slower anyway than Andrews. You give up so much of a vertical presence, be it as like a drive blocking vertically or running vertically down the seam, neither of which does Likely actually do. I assume it's more like zone run concepts that Likely holds his own. But you need that vertical element, especially since the Ravens don't actually have one otherwise. I mean, it'd be different maybe if instead of Rashad Bateman, they had some guy who runs a 4-3-5 and does killer fly post routes all day, but they don't. They have Bateman, who's never going to dictate double teams, and he's never going to make a defense pay for leaving him in single coverage on the boundary. So it's Andrews or it's nothing as far as driving that seam. And I can't guarantee the Ravens will do anything in particular, but I would think results like these and the results that they're likely to get for, forcing Likely into situations where they previously used Andrews, the returns will diminish. And I think they'll sort of just out of necessity go to Andrews a little bit more. But a guy like Charlie Kolar is not going anywhere, in my opinion. And I think if Andrews were to leave the picture for whatever reason, Kolar can be Andrews more or less, because he's a similarly freaky athlete with a vertical game that Likely doesn't really provide.
Yeah, but Likely is really interesting, but I do think that Kolar,
they fit well together. They all do
Mhm.
different stuff, and Likely can do things in the underneath, yards after the catch, lateral routes, stuff like that. That Andrews and Kolar probably can't, because those guys are more like, you aim downfield with a bigger caliber, but Likely does the more underneath, kind of taking easy yards kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Moving chains, that type of deal. But either way, I mean, it's an interesting trio that they have. It's an interesting offense. You don't really have like a true alpha receiver. Zay Flowers has occasionally shown flashes of that, but or at least being the number one target. But him and Bateman, I think that like when those are your top two receivers, it kind of necessitates you getting the tight ends involved. So I do think that, things will continue to go well for Andrews. Before we move on to our next game, I actually have a couple of listener questions that I would like to hear your opinion on. We have Jake Ferguson ranked as tight end 5 this week, and Cade Otton, especially in light of the injuries in Tampa Bay, ranked as tight end 6. How do you call that one?
Well, they're both good players, and I think there's even a chance Otton's the better real life player. But Ferguson is definitely quite good in his own right, and I think he's more permanently fit into the Dallas target rotation than Otton is Tampa Bay. I think structurally, unless the Buccaneers change something structurally, they use Otton more as a player to help them out of a pass play that's developing poorly, like they're trying to set up something to Evans. If the defense is on it, things start going wrong. The distance for Otton to be there to provide like a 5 or a 6 yard catch rather than a sack or an incomplete pass. They don't really try to set up Otton as a featured player. Maybe that changes with the injuries, but we know it's going to be a constant with Ferguson and Dallas. Like he's their wide receiver too, more or less. Tolbert's there, but especially when Cooks is out, Ferguson's the second receiver there, and not a good matchup this week. We saw how badly it can go with Dak in week 6 too, but I think I would go with Ferguson, if only because I'm a little more confident that he would be there to capitalize in garbage time if necessary. Whereas with Otton, I can still imagine the Buccaneers trying and with some amount of success, succeeding to some amount with guys like Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, even Trey Palmer a little bit. And I think for that reason, Otton's less likely to give you big fantasy outputs and certainly not many 100-yard games.
Yeah, the way I see it is that Otton's stock obviously goes up in light of those injuries there, but there is like that structural component where Tampa Bay hasn't been utilizing the tight end so much. They've been going to Godwin and Evans all season long and for years. So it would mark like a kind of schematic change. And I think that they've used the capital in getting guys like Palmer and McMillan. I think they're going to try to keep that a little bit more. So I think we are in lockstep on this one. So it raises Cade Otton to like a top 10, like startable tight end. But again, when you're calling it him versus Ferguson, I do lean Ferguson. And then one more, Jerry Jeudy or Jalen Tolbert.
I think either pick is fine. I think you like Tolbert's situation when Dallas is playing a weak defense, but I don't consider the 49ers that. And as bad as Jeudy has been and as ugly as the Browns offense will continue to be, I really think Judy's going to get like 10 targets on his next 55, 60 snaps or something. So I'd probably go with Jeudy as long as it's PPR.
All right. Good explanation there. We do have a message from our friends over at Underdog. We're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contests, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. Pick whether your favorite players or player will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for your chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players in a pick'em entry. So this week, I like the higher on Jameis Winston. I believe it's around 230 and a half yards. So I'm definitely in on Winston, kind of throwing it around. I do like on the other side of that game, Lamar Jackson higher than 258 total yards from scrimmage. If you're looking for something for tonight, I think I'd be interested in the higher also in Kyron Williams, 70 and a half rushing yards. A lot of the times when I'm making these calls on my underdog picks, what do I use? I use the RotoWire Pick'em tool. They can toggle your favorite sports book, mine being Underdog. DraftKings Pick 6 also great. We have kind of specified filters for each book wherever you're playing. You can, or any pick'em site, you can go ahead and use them and filter it out, and we will give you the best projections to help out your lineup decisions. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick plus your first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code RWNFL to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You got to be 18 or older. You got to be 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 or older if you're in Alabama or Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. Okay, onward. We've got what I think might be the biggest spread we've seen in a game this season. I could be off on that, but it's definitely close. There haven't been a ton of huge favorites thus far this year. Lions, Titans. Lions and Titans. Oh my.
Yeah. Titans are pretty bad, I think. Even if the Lions, trap game sleepwalk into this, it's tough, in my opinion, to lose to the Titans. Like with the way the Dolphins did was by having Tua Tagovailoa get hurt, and then the next two guys turning out to not be NFL quarterbacks at all, and then the fourth guy getting shipped in at such short notice they didn't have the time to teach him the offense, so they kept getting illegal formation penalties every time they tried to snap the ball. So unless something of that sort occurs to the Lions offense all of a sudden, I don't know how the Titans do anything. I mean, they're an awful team. The coaching is awful. They are going to stay that way.
So I was doing the recap podcast from week 7 with Waylon earlier this week. I took a little closer look into Calvin Ridley's numbers this year. Obviously, quarterback play has not been great. You know what his catch rate is?
Let me think. It's like 27 or something.
Too generous, 25.
Oh crap! All right.
Is there any salvaging? Yeah,
no, not really.
Deadly accurate.
So I think Calvin Ridley can do some things, but I think the Titans offense is one of the very worst designed we've seen in a long time, especially for how expensive it is. They sort of just picked up players without thinking of how it was going to work, and we're trying to, I guess, do this smash mouth offense with a sub 210-pound running back in Pollard. Not that any of this is Pollard's fault. It's just it doesn't really make sense for the type of ethos they're trying to establish there. And then Calvin Ridley, maybe the most finesse, fragile receiver in the NFL. You just got to keep him away from contact. And when he gets away from contact, you need to know you have a receiver with precision and punctuality to get the ball there so that it doesn't turn into what it always does with Levis, which is like maybe Ridley gets open for a split second, but Levis doesn't see it at all, and things turn into just kind of a mess where a player like Hopkins should have been able to keep his treading water just because he's such a physical player and can kind of win without space. But even Hopkins was dragged down to pretty much nothing in this offense, and Ridley just never would have projected to fit as well for it as Hopkins. So yeah, it's the exact opposite basically of the conditions in Atlanta where Ridley was ever productive in the first place. A lot of space generated. Matt Ryan, a very timely quarterback. He can't do whatever style of football this is supposed to be that the Titans apparently are playing on purpose.
Yeah, no, it's Titans are next to unwatchable at this point. On the Lions side, I think the big wrinkle is Jameson Williams facing that 2-game suspension that I believe will get started this week. So how does that impact the pass catchers? Is Khalif Raymond maybe someone you have your eye on, maybe for like DFS?
Raymond's I think a capable player, but I guess I'm not perfectly sure how they're going to use him with Tim Patrick kind of emerging here. And in this game, I'm not expecting the Lions to throw a whole lot. They shouldn't need to throw a whole lot, but if they dial up a flea flicker or something like that, or if they just get a play action look because they see the defense is leaving the middle of the field open downfield, Raymond can get there. I just can kind of more easily, I guess, imagine this game being one where the Lions barely even, every play is just kind of ask Madden, don't care what it is, just click, just keep going. Because what are the Titans going to do? Beat them? It doesn't seem necessary to fire downfield when you can probably just accidentally score touchdowns with running backs like these. Like all four of these running backs can probably get going here if the Titans keep playing the way they have.
Yeah, we're looking at a team total of 27.5 for the Lions. I think I like the over for that. Let's get on to a little bit more competitive of a game. We've got Indianapolis going down to Houston to face the Texans. Texans 5-point favorites here. Texans, obviously Nico Collins, we see it every week being, just how impactful of an absence his placement on injured reserve has proven to be. But, this Texans offense, I think that you can give them some grace for, having a tough time at Lambeau Field last week against a Packers defense that has really made some strides this year. But are you starting to get a little bit worried that there's maybe like a sophomore slump going on with Stroud or something else with this offense? Because it's not quite popping the way that we would have hoped and the way that like the ADP set up in the offseason.
Yeah, there's concern because they always budgeted Collins to be the leading producer from scrimmage, and now that they don't have that, it's not just that they have this amount of yardage to budget out and distribute among these other players. It's that the space they were planning on having and like the means of getting that yardage is largely off the table, especially when they get caught in a matchup like they did against the Packers, where there was a really good slot defense with the Packers pretty much all year. And Jair Alexander at one of the two corner spots. It's like if they had Collins or even just another third receiver, they would have maybe been able to isolate a guy like Keyshawn Nixon more and be able to produce, even though Jair is kind of shutting down 1/3 in the slot, slowing down Diggs. But instead in this game, they're just kind of left to go to Dalton Schultz or something. Curiously, Bobby Slowick and the Texans offense went from a fullback heavy offense last year to one where they just don't have it anymore. And I wonder if that's caused an unintended effect of leaving more defensive, more coverage resources just free to float around back there. I think CJ Stroud's playing great, but the difficulty level is really high on him right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think that's where I come down on it as well. Joe Mixon had a great game in week one against
he looks really
Indianapolis.
good. He looks fast, I feel like, which I remember thinking like he almost looks like he's at Oklahoma. Yeah, so I think he might have lost a little weight, or at least defenses are selling out against the pass against the Texans. Maybe some combo of the both.
So with this being a rematch, I think it is worth noting that Indianapolis basically admitted that after week one when Mixon carved them up on the ground, and it was to kind of try to slow down that Indianapolis passing game. I imagine some form of adjustment will happen here, but I still really like Mixon's chances this week. Our listener Michael chimes in noting that Richardson had his best game of the season week one against the Texans. Was that a surprise element thing, or do you think that there is some leaks in the boat in this Texans defense that could be exploited?
Well, the Texans are definitely thin at corner, and they rely on a lot of corner reps being played, especially in the slot, by safeties like Jalen Petrie and Eric Murray, normally Jimmy Ward, guys like that. So they're not really built to cover downfield, and Alec Pierce was rolling in that game. I'm pretty sure Adonai Mitchell beat Lassiter really bad, but Richardson missed that throw. The difference between this week and that game is I think Richardson and the Colts have shown they can't throw underneath, or at least not the way Joe Flacco can. And so if I'm the Texans, I'm definitely I'm cheating more to the deep routes and ignoring more of the routes that Richardson quite simply has not hit yet. But we'll see, how it goes. The Texans are thin at corner. So in my opinion, Shane Steichen is still a good offensive game planner. I think it's just he doesn't have the personnel he was assuming that he had, and he's requiring a certain amount of time to figure it out and adjust to it. But meanwhile, I think the Texans offense should roll either way in this game, like including Stroud, because the concerns about, Jair Alexander and the slot coverage for Green Bay being good, neither detail applies here. The slot is open, the boundary's open. If they go three wide offense all game, I think Hutchinson can beat these outside corners. So I think Stroud gets rolling here, and maybe it's a useful game for the Indianapolis passing game just because they might be trying to play catch up the whole game.
Before we get on over to our next game, we're going to look at the Packers versus the Jags. We do have a message from our friends over at DraftKings Pick 6 featuring our guy, Nick Whalen.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And we're back. We got the Pack and the Jaguars. This one taking place down in Duval. We've got the Packers 3.5-point favorites here. Packers coming off the impressive win. The Jags took care of business, I guess you could say, against the Patriots this past week. Is an efficient game from Trevor Lawrence, but not overly explosive as far as the numbers for fantasy were concerned. But obviously the run game got going with Tank Bigsby. Again, this Packers defense really, really tough right now. So what's your lean here?
Well, the Jaguars were playing against a pretty beaten down, shorthanded team, and even by kind of like the second, third quarter, the run defense was totally gassed for the Patriots, and they weren't even like getting off the snap at all. Even Dearness Johnson was kind of finding a bunch of room, running that 4.8 40. So we'll see. The Packers run defense hasn't exactly been good either. Be it Bigsby or ETN, maybe the Jaguars can keep the run game going here. What I have no faith in yet is the ability of the Jaguars passing game to do anything against any defense that is not completely overmatched, which the Patriots were, even though they have good corners. Admittedly, the long pass to Brian Thomas against Christian Gonzalez, that's the kind of play, like, if you can make that throw, you can beat the toughest player against the defense, and that can open up everything. But I don't have faith in Press Taylor being able to line up single coverage like that. I think it kind of looked bad for the Patriots. The Patriots have gotten beat getting cute with their coverage, cutting loose receivers deep, like DK Metcalf got that long touchdowns against Kyle Duggar, stuff like that, which maybe makes the Patriots defensive coordinating look less than great. The Packers, this Halfley guy, I can't claim to be super familiar with him, but at the very least, he's a lot better than Barry and Pettin before him. And the Packers fans seem pretty pleased with him. So if Halfley is a good defensive coordinator, he will go to great lengths to make sure that Brian Thomas is not left in single coverage, certainly not vertically like the Patriots did. But A, easier said than done, and B, the Packers have corner issues. Like, they maybe figured out the slot, and Jair is great on the other side. But last week they were trying to play, they moved Keyshawn Nixon from the slot to the outside, and he's just a bad corner. There's a reason he was a practice squad guy 3 or 4 years into his NFL career. So if the Packers can't figure out that other corner spot, then certainly Gabe Davis can beat that guy. If they put Jair Alexander on Thomas, then Gabe Davis can probably beat whoever that, be it Nixon or Stokes or whoever. But if he doesn't, and if Thomas can't get the better of Alexander, or if Christian Kirk can't get rolling in the slot, we're right back to the Jags seeing a lot of dead ends. And I don't think that if the passing game doesn't demonstrate that deep threat, I don't think you're going to see Tank Bigsby running, 8 yards untouched over and over and over, 15 plus carries into the game. So I could be wrong, but I think the Packers pretty much take care of business here to the extent that I like them to cover that.
Yeah, I do as well. I think this is a really good setup for the Packers and kind of a nightmare matchup for the Jags. Let's get over to the Dolphins Cardinals matchup. Got the Dolphins checking in as 3.5-point favorites. Obviously, the return of Tua really kind of alters everything when it comes to this offense. To paraphrase Tyreek Hill yesterday, I'm effing back. Start me. So I'm going to start him. I've been willingly benching Jalen Waddle where I've had him over this last month or so. It's just been pretty unwatchable as far as Miami is concerned. But I think Tua really makes all the difference with this offense. So, knock on wood that he's able to stay healthy the rest of the way. But I think if you kind of were invested in this Miami offense and kind of weathered the storm over this last little while Tua has been absent, I think that, it's wheels up starting this week against the Cards.
Yeah, definitely. And the Cardinals defense is accommodating. Like, they've improved the personnel from last year, but it's still got to be bottom 8 at best. So Tua being back, certainly Tyreek, Waddle. I'm curious to see if the Dolphins keep featuring Jonnu Smith as a receiver, because they should. He's not redundant to Hill or Waddle. He would, if anything, tap into new territories entirely. But yeah, I'm hoping that with all three of those guys on Tua, then maybe this offense can finally get rolling like it did last year.
I think we're going to see it. I think that, that things look better for the run game as well. It's complementary football. As far as the Cardinals go, it was a low scoring win that they had over the Chargers last week. And, you'll take the victory, but what's kind of the state of the state when it comes to Arizona's offense right now?
Yeah, their offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, has no idea what he's doing. They've built the offense exactly the way you, as a defense, if you were given like a list of demands as a defensive coordinator, you'd ask an offense to do the things that the Cardinals are doing on their own volition. Putting Marvin Harrison as both your primary deep threat and your primary target source is just designing it necessarily to have a double team on every play. Like, you look at forget Malik Neighbors. You're not even seeing the Cardinals use Harrison the way the Jaguars do Brian Thomas. Like, the Jaguars move around Brian Thomas to get the best matchup against the defense, and they use him on a variety of looks from a variety of alignments to and variety of depths to coax the defense into taking certain steps that leave open certain parts of the defense and get them away from the bracket coverage. But with the way that the Cardinals use Harrison as their by default deep threat, leaving Michael Wilson as something like the de facto intermediate, and Greg Dortch just a punt machine in the slot, you can completely ignore Dortch as a defense. Just you just love it when the offense puts Dortch on the field, because that means you can put 2-3 people on Harrison if you want, because Wilson running a 4.58, he's not getting behind you, and Dortch isn't even supposed to. It's like, by design, it's for getting 5-6 yard catches. So Harrison, unless something changes, will continue to see a double team every play, and particularly when a guy like Wilson doesn't threaten the defense vertically, he is not necessarily good enough to beat a team's corner 2 or any given perimeter corner who's starting. So it could go better, but at the very least, the Cardinals need to get Dortch off the field, and they'd be better off, yes, with Zay Jones, but even he is not ideal. They'd ideally have JJ Nelson would be a better third receiver for the Cardinals. They could tell him to run a post route or a fly route every single play. That would be an upgrade, because at least a safety would have to run with him eventually. But even with the Dolphins defense looking not that great, it's more to do with the run defense. It's not the pass. The pass defense actually has some good pieces. So I unfortunately think this Cardinals offense is dead.
I do too. It's very frustrating. In Harrison's case, it's great that he has an average depth of target of almost 13 yards down the field, but
it's bad in this one context, though, because
right.
If there was somebody else with a higher depth of target, then we're cooking, because it's like that second player would be setting the ceiling and dictating the depth of the safety on that side, clearing room for Harrison, or barring that player could make the defense pay for putting the safety on Harrison anyway. This way that they run it, you can put a defense that is quite literally incapable of defending any further than 8 yards on the field and almost never pay for it.
Yeah, that's problematic, I would say, when it comes to Arizona right now. So I really like the Dolphins in this spot, actually. Let's move on over to the Jets versus the Patriots. We just talked about the Patriots defense a decent bit, but they're getting 7 at home against the Jets. I can't trust the Jets right now. I just don't think that the addition of Devontae Adams really fixes anything other than maybe Aaron Rodgers is less awful to deal with on a day-to-day basis around the facility.
Yeah, no, he's probably even worse though because the clique is just that much tighter, and he just thinks everybody else is like a loser who shouldn't be allowed to talk to him or look him in the eye. So yeah, the Jets team morale is definitely down the drain at this point. But I don't know, it's like the Patriots. It's like they weren't even on paper supposed to be competitive this year, and then they kind of did a borderline tank move, like trading Matt Judon. It's like you went in with a trash roster. Their only good personnel is at corner on defense, and we'll see what that can amount to here. But as last week showed, if you just put the Patriots on the defense and just keep challenging the run game, which the Jets would really be smart to just give Breece Hall the football. They did it lately last game, so to their credit, but they got to keep doing it. And ideally give Braylon Allen even fewer snaps because he's a fullback and it's a ridiculous meme. And when you have Breece Hall, there's this almost like LaDainian Tomlinson like presence. Just give him the friggin' football. I think if they do that here, it's kind of a cakewalk, just in the sense that the Patriots are not a serious team. But you're right. When teams like the Jets, when they get down, when like mutiny type grumbling starts going on, it's kind of an all bets off kind of thing. I'm just not convinced the Patriots can play serious NFL football right now.
Even with those constraints on this Patriots team right now, how encouraged have you been by Drake May?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, the Jags defense is easy in comparison to the Jets team that he's facing here, and in comparison to the Bears at Chicago in a couple weeks. But May did at least anything that you could reasonably expect of him there, and that's something. He's been encouraging overall. He doesn't seem like he's getting phased by the brutal task that's been put in front of him. So, yeah, definitely like May long term, and he's done a little bit better in the short term than I expected. I just don't think this is a good matchup for him.
Yeah, it should be tough with that Jets defense, and not taking the bye after a London game. Who knows what the Patriots are going to come out with in this one. So Jets should win. I for whatever reason, I think that the Patriots can stay within 7, but I think if that is the case, it ends up being a very, very sloppy game, and we see the under 41, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love to be wrong and see May shoot it out here, because it would be extremely funny if Drake May, this kind of head in the clouds, innocent rookie who just kind of seems to assume the most optimistic thing about the world and the people around him. It would be really funny to see him kind of just by accident beat someone as vain and arrogant as Rodgers. But unfortunately, I think the bad guys win this one.
Well said.
Probably
well said. Before we get to our next game, which will be Falcons Bucks, we got a message from our pals over at Circa. It's football season. Y'all know that. And the best place to catch the games is at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Y'all already knew that as well. Featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. From owner suites to cabanas, daybeds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With the temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim, located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. All right, NFC South clash that we just saw not too long ago. A very entertaining Thursday night game between the Falcons and the Bucks a few weeks back. Unfortunately, the Bucks have really been bit by the injury bug going into this one, and therefore the Falcons 2.5-point favorites on the road in Tampa. Falcons, I mean, in their own right, I mean, fantasy-wise, your investments other than Cousins worked out last week. Kyle Pitts had the strong game, Drake London the touchdown, Bijan runs for over 100, but still just a bad game from Atlanta overall. Do they pull it back together against a Bucks team that's pretty beleaguered right now?
I guess they probably will. The Tampa Bay defense is quite bad, but just the same, the Seahawks didn't have Reek Woolen or Trey Brown last week. So Drake London and Darnell Mooney were going against third, fourth stringers. I don't even know who. So it should get better here. It just is one of those things. Like in the meantime, we gotta have to take a leap of faith because, admittedly, Cousins already blew it in what might have been an probably not easier. So the Seahawks, even with two corners down, probably are a slightly tougher defense than the Buccaneers. But at the very least, otherwise, we've already seen Cousins put up numbers against this Tampa defense. So hopefully it's not too much to just assume that he does it again.
So with Tampa, we talked about it a little bit when we were discussing Cade Otton earlier, but how aggressive were you in picking up some of the Buccaneers pass catchers, whether it's McMillan or Trey Palmer this week? And, how do you feel about these guys, this week and going forward?
I didn't pursue any of them, actually. I was surprised to see McMillan, I think, went for something like 250 or so in an NFFC league. And I didn't even, I kind of forgot to consider him in large part because I think Sterling Shepard might be their wide receiver too. And Palmer, he's at risk of ending up being like a decoy kind of guy because he's so fast and not particularly polished otherwise. So I'm expecting McMillan to more or less replace what would it be? McMillan, I guess, back to what he was playing at the start of the year before he got hurt, which is to say like a flanker kind of thing. And I think Shepard might be their main slot guy with Palmer kind of being like the first man up at any of the three spots, which should still result in 30 snaps most weeks. And if Evans is out this week, Palmer's playing 45 plus snaps. So all those guys are kind of interesting. I think McMillan has the best long-term future, but Shepard, this is a guy, even at 32, he's only a retread, practice squad guy because of how many injuries he had. Shepard has always played well when he's been physically able. So I kind of consider Shepard the main guy after Evans for the time being.
Okay. All right. So bear that in mind. I think a lot of people, leap at the rookies. I think that's totally understandable. And
I like McMillan too. It's like Shepard's a polished pro, he's ready to play right now.
Exactly. And, kind of looking to, have one more like kind of good run in his pro career. Do you expect the Bucs to run a little bit more with Godwin and Evans being out?
If they have the luxury of doing it, yes, but particularly given, their offense, it's like they gotta be grateful when they can run and not just try to run because they lack Godwin at this point. But certainly they have a deep backfield. I don't know how to call the usage between those guys. I think White, reiterated that he's the best pass catcher of the group. Irving has done well in a bit role as a runner, but I'm just not convinced he can hold Tucker off if it's put up to merit. Like Tucker keeps playing well, and he was not that long ago considered the better prospect of the two. So those three, maybe they lean on them more, but good luck guessing on what basis.
Yeah, that's going to be a headache for managers as long as all three are healthy. Our guy Michael points out astutely, and we remember this. Baker and Shepard do have a history back in their
I kind of
OU
forgot
days.
off the top of my head, but now I'm that much more resolute on the Shepard gavel.
Those OU teams were a lot of fun. Let's go Eagles Bengals. Bengals 2.5 point favorites. This is up a little bit from when I checked on Wednesday. I don't know. What does that indicate to you? I mean, the Eagles obviously dispatched of a Giants team that the Bengals had struggled with the week prior. The Bengals, kind of struggled against Cleveland to put up a lot of points, albeit a tough defense. But I don't know. I still believe in this Bengals team, and I think that their A game is as good as almost anybody's. But it's just hard to know if you're ever going to get it on a week-to-week basis right now.
Right. It's, I think, simply enough stated with the Bengals. Like, they have really standout talents, but their coaching is mediocre at best. And so they're liable for some letdowns that just shouldn't happen, but they're also capable of really great play, even if they go against a great defense, which I think the Eagles are a pretty good defense at worst. And a little couple tweaks, you could imagine them getting a lot better. I guess their weakness right now might be the edge rush, which had been an issue, but their corner personnel, if Slay's doing okay, it's like Quinion Mitchell looks good. Cooper DeJean in the slot might make a difference. I haven't had a chance to look at him yet, but I think he's got to be better than Avonte Maddox was. So I feel like the Eagles are not a pushover defense and might even be something like a top 12, top 10 NFL defense. It's just, like we were just saying, that's not necessarily a deterrent for the Bengals because they can, with Jamar Chase, if he's on the top of his game and T. Higgins is on the top of his game, if Burrow has enough time to let those guys get loose, they can, in theory, beat pretty much any group of corners. It's just, sometimes the pass rush does get to Burrow and sometimes Zach Taylor just gets out coached. But Jamar Chase, not that I know how it's supposed to happen, especially if Mitchell keeps playing well and if Slay is playing well, but Chase is due for the kind of game where he has on like 55 snaps, 12 to 15 targets because his target rate per snap is lagging at the moment. Maybe there's a structural reason for that persists here, but otherwise it's kind of setting up that the Eagles are almost, they're at risk of drawing just one of those bad cards where it's like, sorry, it's Jamar Chase day.
Yeah. And despite the kind of slow start, Jamar Chase is wide receiver 1 in fantasy so far. Obviously there's taken some attrition for him as well. The situation in Miami, a couple other things, injuries and so on have kind of helped grease that, but Chase looks pretty awesome. So I've been as invested as I am. I've been happy to see that. A couple news items to just get out there for everybody. TJ Hawkinson just ruled out for this evening. That's per Adam Schefter. And then per Ian Rappaport, Jonathan Taylor fully participated in practice on Thursday. So that looks good for his status going into this weekend. All right, we've got a handful of afternoon games to hit and then the prime times. Let's go Saints Chargers. Really tricky to figure this one out because the Chargers are favored by 7. But I don't trust them to win by that much. Yes, yeah, exactly.
If you're projected to lose by, the Chargers don't even try to win by 7 when they can. They're like, let's sit on the ball when we got a nice 4-point cushion and just bleed out the last 27 minutes from the clock.
They were trying so hard to do that against Arizona the other night.
Yeah, so I like the Chargers, and I think they should soon be one of the better teams in the NFL, but I need Herbert to get a little more help from his receivers. Like I need, and don't ask me how that's going to happen because they have this tight end on the field, at least one, and Disley, good player, is not even ostensibly supposed to run routes. So they're dependent on like Simi Fehoko to play 45 plus snaps, and that's even if Ladd McConkey doesn't have some hip or back issue or whatever else flare up to knock down his snap count. So hopefully Quentin Johnson can get going again. I don't really expect him to, but hopefully it just happens for some reason. And I think Herbert can get rolling if they get to that point. Of course, Dobbins, of course, Fidel, we like. So I just need that third pass catcher sort of to step up. And maybe DJ Chark can come back at some point, but I haven't heard anything yet about him. So yeah, it's at this point where I don't know I don't know how to propose that the Chargers actually improve, especially against this really good group of Saints corners. I guess worse without a Debo, but I think Alontae Taylor can be a really good boundary corner, even though he's played in the slot. So I think that the Saints defense plays tough, and if the Chargers are going to win, it needs to be as simple as they run better, which the Saints' run defense has been absolute garbage, maybe the worst in the league, and the Chargers can't turn the ball over, which I'm sure they're banking on the Saints doing exactly that. But yeah, still, I don't know how you feel comfortable about 7 points for a Chargers team that might not throw the ball more than 25 times.
Right. So the lack of offensive projection, we just are going to get a low scoring game in this one. It's 40.5. Any sign of hope for this Saints offense?
Don't like quote me on this, but they need Derek Carr back. And
I would never attribute that to you. No,
I didn't even say it, so that's why you can't. But yeah, they need Derek Carr more than Rattler can't play. If Haener can't outplay Rattler, then he can't play either. Derek Carr is like the 40th best quarterback in the league, but these other two are maybe like 85 or such.
Yeah. Haener's not it, and Rattler, like, you can be intrigued by the arm strength, but that's
he's like 24 already. He's never been good. You got to let some stuff go.
Yeah, I mean, some people really do, and I've been guilty of being too hung up on what someone was rated coming out of high school. But you know, oh well. Let's see. Let's go to Bills Seahawks. This one is pretty fun. Where this one's out in Seattle. One of those games where it's like, have they ever played each other? Have the Bills and Seahawks like ever actually played? Your thoughts here?
I think first of all, the Seahawks are weird to figure out. Their defense all over looked like trash before last week, and then with two of their two top corners out, boundary corners, I should say, out, they pretty much just dominate the home team Falcons. I don't know what that was, but the Bills are a much tougher team, especially if Cooper can keep going, which I think he will. I think there was just a ton of there was like yearning for a Cooper type receiver to step onto the field, and you kind of got the sense that everything else would kind of work itself out if they could just find that key. And I think it's as simple as they did. Cooper, when he's locked in, or it's not even locked in, like when he's median grade Amari Cooper, he's capable of beating even some of the best corners in the league. So I guess it's maybe a weird travel type dynamic for the Bills. I'm not sure that they're how many games everybody's played in the last 2 weeks or whatever it is, but I don't see a reason why the Bills should lose. And with DK Metcalf being out, it even more so becomes like, I don't know how they would.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the Bills can make it happen. The Metcalf injury, I think, is really significant for this Seahawks passing game. I will say something that I've noticed of late. I think over the last 2 games, Noah Fant has caught all 10 of his targets. Is he
That makes
someone that's
sense.
getting on your radar a
he
little
should
bit?
have been good. It's like maybe he's just another David Njoku kind of case where it took a while for no particular reason, but the talent was always there. He always was a fast, a really athletic guy who could play real tight end at Iowa. And he had that foot or whatever injury for the first 4 to 6 weeks this year. If Fant can shake that off, he should be one of the more productive pass catching tight ends in the NFL. But yeah, I am worried for the Seattle offense for spacing reasons without Metcalf, because now, unless Tyler Lockett can still get deep, it's like Fant's probably their vertical threat. Fant's a lot faster than Smith and Jigba is.
Do you think that like a heavy Ken Walker day is something that could be a problem for the Bills?
Mike could be someone in the chat was saying Metcalf
He didn't practice on Wednesday. So fake news.
So he's out the 2 practices, and then they'll see an evaluation on Friday. But a real MCL sprain, and the initial prognosis was like 2 to 4 weeks. Anyway, sorry, Jen, you're talking about Kenneth Walker, right?
Yes, and against this Bills run D.
Yeah, I think the Bills run defense got a little better when Ed Oliver came back from injury, but it's Walker's already run well against a couple of tough, rough run defenses, and I don't know why anything would really change here. He's maybe there's a efficiency decline a little bit with Metcalf being out, but it could easily be offset by more work too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be busy for him, but yeah, like you said, the Bills run defense improving a little bit. Another notable injury that is going to color how we view this game. We've got the Bears and the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, it doesn't look like he was able to practice Thursday due to that rib issue. So it's starting to look like, unfortunately, we're not going to get the battle of 1 versus 2 in this one.
Yeah, the Bears defense, at least against the pass, is a lot tougher than the Washington one. So Caleb would be quite disappointing to not show up here, but he's done better enough lately, and which is to say the Bears blocking has been better enough lately. Right or wrong, I'm kind of starting to feel entitled to getting good numbers from Caleb Williams every week again, and especially with a matchup of this sort. Like the Commanders defense should not be able to cover these 3 receivers, even if Keenan Allen's kind of toast, which who knows, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But Odunze and Moore is a lot for those corners to deal with on the boundary, and there's no pass rush for the Commanders to really bridge the gap. So it would be like unforced error stuff on the part of Caleb, Waldron, whoever, if they manage to screw up here. And as far as the other side, I don't even know what's a fair expectation for Mariota. I do personally suspect that there's a system element to what's made the Commanders as effective on offense as they've been. Mariota, looking like Oregon Mariota last week didn't really ease my suspicions there. But this Bears defense is the best pass defense that the Commanders will have seen on the schedule, I think, pretty easily. So we'll see. It's certainly a big test for that offense. And I don't doubt that if they struggle here, the narrative will be like Mariota just sucks. And he probably does. But I do think that the offense for the Commanders was headed toward a rough game here. Aside from Robinson, the Bears' run defense is probably more vulnerable than the pass defense. And certainly Mariota being out there will give Commanders more reason to consider giving the ball to running backs.
Yeah, I would think so as well. I can't get the image out of my head of DJ Moore just going completely bonkers against Washington last year. I think I saw yesterday that his anytime touchdown prop was like almost 2-1, like plus 185. Going to be very interested in DJ Moore scoring a touchdown. Also, Caleb Williams, a little bit of homecoming for him.
Yeah, no Kendall Fuller either for Washington this time, and that's actually who Moore beat for that like 80-yarder last year or something. Now it's St. Just and Senra still.
Oh, St. Just. I guess he's out of the burn ward from the Zay Flowers game a couple weeks ago. Good to see, but that's tough for Washington in this spot. Let's go Panthers Broncos. It's dizzying to see the Broncos favored by almost 10 points, but against the Panthers, against Bryce Young, it makes sense.
Yeah, let's do it. Broncos by I don't know, 24, something like that. They're gonna run all over the Panthers, and they're not gonna have short fields when they do it, or they're not gonna have long fields. They're gonna have short fields rather.
Yeah, a lot of turnovers I'm expecting this is a really good Denver defense. And I just think that's just even a bad defense is bad news against the Panthers. There's just nothing to see there really, other than like Chuba Hubbard and maybe occasionally Deontay Johnson. But on the Broncos side, unfortunately, outside of the Javonte Williams, it's hard to jump in with both feet, even in a great matchup like this on the pass catchers or even Bo Nix. Maybe you consider it for DFS, but for my season long leagues, I'm not. Feeling great about, even your Cortland Suttons of the world.
Yeah, those guys, it's always a coin flip at best. But I think if for whatever reason you have to start Bo Nix, he has a way of kind of running for 40 yards and a touchdown, even when he passes poorly. So he has no excuse for playing poorly here in any case.
No. Okay. Next one, Raiders Chiefs. We got the Raiders at home. The Raiders famously beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas. That's been kind of one of the high water marks for this particular era, but the Raiders have obviously not looked particularly good this season. And the quarterback issues continue to compound. We're going to have Gardner Minshew again. I think they signed Desmond Ridder earlier this week. The Chiefs have famously, kind of looked clunky, at least relative to expectations, but I do kind of like them to just kind of steamroll here.
Yeah, the Raiders are kind of just falling apart as an organization. I bet just about anything that Tom Telesco is already at work behind the scenes to blame Antonio Pierce for all this. But whatever else might be true, it's certainly the case that the Raiders have no talent, not much anyway. A couple, Crosby and I don't know, Nate Hobbs on defense, and then maybe Colton Miller, you could say, on offense, but they just don't have any way to move the ball. It's like they're down to Alexander Madison as their leading from scrimmage threat, which it'd be one thing if he was your fourth or fifth, but first, you're probably not moving the ball against anybody at this point.
No, and the
Chiefs defense is good.
It's really, really good. Mike points out that the Raiders need Jim Plunkett back. Couldn't agree more. Get him back out.
They need Al Davis back.
That everything would be better.
How about that?
Huh? Okay, we've got two more. We got the primetime games. First of all, we've got the 49ers, 4-point favorites against the Cowboys. Obviously, the 49ers, they're dealing with injury issues of their own, with Brandon Ayuk going out and Deebo Samuel having to go to the hospital earlier this week. So between Pearsall, Cowing, Chris Conley, how do you kind of handicap this new crop of 49ers receivers that might see some playing time, and how rosy do things look for Juwan Jennings going forward?
Jennings will always have to operate mostly in the slot. So if Jennings is active, that's bad news for Cowing, because I think Cowing is very good and clearly from scrimmage that the 49ers really could use, but he ran behind Ronnie Bell last week. So if you're behind Ronnie Bell, you're definitely behind Conley and so on. Pearsall at least seems ahead of Conley and what's his name, Bell. So while I think Cowing would do well, I doubt he gets the shot to really prove it. Pearsall should get the shot to prove it, and I think that he, against these corners, not to put an unfair expectation on the guy coming back from what he has, but he played a lot of snaps last week. And I thought Pearsall was a really good prospect coming out of Florida. So he was a bit of a reach probably in the first, or a surprise pick in the first round. But I like the pick because I think he's a good player. And it seems like the 49ers might actually need him here. On the boundary, he's their only candidate to get going as a pass cutter, aside from Bell. But I just personally see Bell as like a wide receiver 6 special teamers type.
Yeah. I don't think that Bell moves the needle, but I think Pearsall, if you invested in him earlier, if you grabbed him off of waivers, I think this is a good time to get him fired up. Any expectations with the Cowboys coming off the bye that maybe they fix something?
I guess it has to help a little. It's just they've got issues extending to the top of the team. Jerry Jones is finally losing his mind, and not the way everybody thought he had previously. It's like he's actually losing it this time. And Mike McCarthy showing up to press conferences 2 hours late. No reason cited. Like there's stuff going on with that team. They've got issues behind the scenes, and they've already laid an egg. That Lions game was brutal. That's a loser crap team kind of thing to do. And the 49ers are in a really urgent spot. They don't have the bye, but Dallas has the 49ers' full attention, and it's not going to be easy for Dallas. I don't think they really have it in them to play well in games that are difficult.
Yeah, on the Cowboys front, like only them and the Panthers have gotten boat raced by the Saints this year. Like that loss was bad at the time.
Remember those days? Remember the good Saints after because they played Dallas. That was a time.
That was a whirlwind, 7 days or so before reality sunk back in New Orleans. And then rounding it out, the Steelers looked like they had a competent passing game last week against the Jets, made some opportunistic plays, the blocked kick, everything like that. So, I mean, the Steelers team, it's just kind of a more of the same. Like, I don't know what the top end looks like, but they're tough to play every single week, and they don't really play down to their opponents. So I think that, I feel good about them against the Giants.
Yeah, Tomlin factor. I mean, you give him $1 of talent, he gives you $1.50 of production, and now he seems to have a pretty talented team, a team that's coherently structured. So Giants, I like Dable actually, but I think he's a really good coach actually, but they are not a well-built team. The Steelers were built with a coherent plan, and it looks like they executed it.
And therefore, this is going to be a tough spot for the Giants. Just saw one more little breaking news for everybody. A push notification from our friends over at Underdog that Puka Nacua will be playing this evening. So bear that in mind. All the fantasy managers out there that were wondering if it was go time for him, he'll be back in. As far as the Steelers go, just one more kind of element, like how do you view Pickens' rest of season after what we saw with how well he worked with Russ?
Well, the Jets were down a couple corners, but I still think that was probably a challenging matchup. Certainly anytime he was lined up against Gardner, that's a tough matchup. But it's as simple as Russell Wilson is a better passer, at least for this scheme, than Justin Fields was. And George Pickens is one of the NFL's best receivers on a team that doesn't have an established second pass catcher, or at least they're at tight end. So yeah, Pickens, you worry about like the double triple teams, but I think he's going to have a high target share. And I think with Wilson there, we have reason to be optimistic about the efficiency again too.
Yeah, I think, this Steelers team they're going to be tough. I don't know what the ceiling is once again, but I mean, every single week they're going to give you a tough game, no question about it. That's going to wrap it up for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Really appreciate everyone joining in on the live stream. Hopefully we got to everybody's questions reasonably well. If you want to check out what we've got going on at RotoWire, you get a little free trial. You don't even have to enter your credit card. RotoWire.com/pod. Big thanks to our sponsors over at Underdog, over at DraftKings Pick 6, and over at Circa. For my co-host Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.